What if the world told
I'm
you that
sorry,
you were
Captain.
gone,
Your
that your
authorization does
service
not
didn't
include the
matter,
dog.
that
I
your
cannot grant
legacy
you
had been
entry.
erased? And then one day,
We are
you walked
expected.
back through the gates with the one partner who never gave up on you. Aaron, Hale, and Ranger were declared dead for 10 years, until the moment they saved an entire base from a drone meant to kill dozens. A forgotten soldier, a resurrected war dog, and a miracle no one saw coming. If their story moved you, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video with someone who still believes in second chances. A thin veil of morning fog drifted across the naval base entrance as the sun pushed faint gold into the sky. The road leading to the main gate gleamed with dew, and the air carried the scent of salt, steel, and a silence that felt both familiar and unwelcome to Aaron Hale. Aaron walked with the unhurried stride of someone who had once moved through places like this as if they were home. At 32, he carried the build of a man carved out of years of discipline. Broad shoulders beneath a fitted Navy jacket, muscular arms hardened by countless hours of training and deployment, and a lean waist that spoke to a life where every calorie burned had purpose. His face held clean, sharp angles, a square jaw shadowed by light stubble, high cheekbones, and gray-blue eyes that always seemed to be searching for threats, even when he tried to relax. His short, dark brown hair was trimmed with military precision, the remnants of a habit no civilian years could break. His skin carried the tan of endless sun exposures, mixed with faint scars barely visible near his temple and jawline, small reminders of missions no longer found in official reports. But beneath all that external strength lived a deeper tension, something internal and difficult to categorize. Aaron had spent years learning how to stand tall, how to hide the fractured pieces beneath the armor. Today, though, those fragments felt close to the surface. Returning to a base, any base, pulled memories he wasn't sure he wanted to face. Memories of the day everything had gone wrong, when a mission that should have been routine had shattered both his team and his future. The day the world believed Ranger had died. The day Aaron disappeared from the system. Now Ranger walked beside him again, not as a ghost, but as a living contradiction. Ranger was a Belgian Malinois, 7 years old, prime working age, though his history made him seem far older. His build was compact, yet powerful, with muscles rippling under a tan coat marked by darker patches along his back and face. His ears stood erect, always listening, and his eyes held a deep intelligence sharpened by years of specialized SEAL canine training. Ranger moved with a precision far beyond ordinary obedience. Each step synchronized with Aaron's gait, each breath measured, every shift of weight deliberate. His presence was calm, but not passive. He emanated the quiet alertness of a weapon sheathed, but never forgotten. Aaron felt it with every step. Ranger sensed the tension in the air, as if he could taste it, yet he walked without hesitation. The dog had always been good at reading him, sometimes too good. Ranger had been at his side through firefights, ambushes, and covert extractions, but also through the nights when Aaron had stared at nothing, replaying the past. Ranger had never wavered. He never hesitated. He never questioned why they had been buried in classified silence instead of honored. He simply stood beside the man he trusted. And now they were back. Not because Aaron wanted glory, not because he wanted forgiveness, but because a letter, a physical letter, had arrived at his door. A quietly worded invitation to observe a new canine program demonstration. No instructions, no signatures, just a date, time, and base name. And somehow, Aaron knew. Someone in authority still remembered Echo Phantom, the unit the Navy erased from public record. Someone wanted him here. Approaching the gate, Aaron tightened his grip on Ranger's leash. The security checkpoint was manned by 2 young gate guards, both with crisp uniforms and the unmistakable posture of newly minted enlisted personnel. Straight backs, nervous energy, eagerness to enforce protocol as though the world depended on it. The first guard stepped forward with a clipboard. He couldn't have been older than 24. His sandy blonde hair was neatly buzzed, and his fair complexion still held traces of youth. His body, though fit, did not yet possess the layered strength of battle-tested experience. His name tag read, PFC Jared Collins. His brown eyes held curiosity, but also caution, the kind that often misinterpreted confidence as a threat. "Good morning, sir," Collins said, tone practiced. Identification and reason for visiting the base. Aaron reached into his jacket and handed over a leather folder containing his old Navy credentials, a printed invitation, and a handler badge that the system had likely never seen before. Collins scanned them with quick, efficient movements, but Aaron saw the moment confusion flickered across his face. "This ID, sir, it's outdated," Collins said carefully. "This handler badge doesn't align with our current K9 divisions, and your invitation lacks a digital authorization code." Aaron inhaled slowly. "It was sent by mail. That's all I received." Collins blinked, clearly not used to situations outside the rigid structure of a digital logbook. Behind him, another guard shifted his stance. This second guard, Corporal Maddox Reyes, was older, late 20s, sturdier, with a deep brown complexion and black hair cropped close to the scalp. He had an athletic build and a quiet intensity in his dark eyes that suggested he took security duties seriously, to the point of rigidity. He stepped closer, his posture subtly assertive. "Sir, protocol requires verification through the current system," Reyes said. His voice was calm, but carried authority. "Your documents aren't recognized." Aaron kept his gaze level, neutral, yet firm. "Check the invitation number manually." "We will," Reyes replied, "but you and the dog will need to step aside for secondary screening." Aaron could feel Ranger's focus sharpen. The dog's body tightened, not in aggression, but in readiness. Ranger's breathing slowed, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of a creature assessing every angle of the environment. He didn't bark, he didn't growl, he didn't flick an ear, but his stillness spoke volumes. Collins noticed it too. He stared a second longer than he should have. "That's a really disciplined dog," Collins murmured. "Is he active duty?" Aaron felt a subtle ache beneath his ribs, a private ache. "No," he said quietly, "not anymore." The guards motioned him to a tent adjacent to the gate, a makeshift screening station used for irregular cases. As Aaron walked, he felt eyes on him. Families coming for the demonstration watched with mixed curiosity and suspicion. A muscular stranger with a service dog that didn't act like a pet? It drew attention. Inside the tent, a folding table separated visitors from security techs, each equipped with handheld scanners and a monitor displaying base access lists. One technician, a slim man named Evan Barstow, mid-20s with light brown hair and freckles, plugged Aaron's ID into the system. His posture suggested he had been awake for a few too many hours, and his rapid keyboard tapping reflected a desire to avoid confrontation. After only a few seconds, he frowned. "The system doesn't register you as active military, reserve, or veteran with current clearance," Barstow reported. "The handler badge is, invalid? The serial number looks discontinued." Reyes crossed his arms. "Sir, do you have any newer credentials?" "No," Aaron said. "Everything I had was tied to a program that no longer exists." Collins, standing nearby, exchanged a confused look with his corporal. "What program was that?" "Classified," Aaron answered. Reyes exhaled sharply, displeased. "Sir, we have procedures. Anyone claiming classified service must provide verifiable markers." "I gave you the markers," Aaron replied evenly. "Your system is the one that no longer recognizes them." Barstow checked the invitation envelope itself. His voice wavered. "Corporal, there's no digital stamp, and no sender information." Reyes stepped forward, lowering his voice slightly. "Sir, without verified authorization, we must consider the possibility that you're misrepresenting your background." Aaron's jaw tightened. He could feel years of buried frustration rising, memories of being erased, of missions stripped from history, of losing the one team that mattered. Ranger sensed the shift and leaned slightly toward him, grounding him. Collins glanced at Ranger again. "Sir, what division did he serve in?" Aaron hesitated. The truth wasn't something casually spoken. "Echo Phantom," he said quietly. Barstow's fingers froze above the keyboard. Collins furrowed his brows. "Never heard of it." "You weren't supposed to," Aaron murmured. Reyes stepped closer, face hardening with suspicion. "Sir, this is starting to sound like a fabricated unit." But before he could finish, Ranger shifted. It was subtle, a single adjustment of his stance, a tightening of his core, ears angling with laser focus. Not aggressive, but absolutely precise. A movement only those trained in special warfare techniques would recognize. Ranger was silently assessing threats, marking exits, categorizing the guards' positions. No pet could do that. No standard canine had that level of tactical awareness. Collins's eyes widened. Corporal, that stance. He's trained for close quarters response. That's old school SEAL canine doctrine. Reyes hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his stern facade. Those techniques haven't been used for over a decade. Yeah, Aaron said softly. And yet, Barstow suddenly looked nervous. Corporal, should we call the base supervisor? Reyes nodded reluctantly. Yes, and keep him here. As the call was made, Aaron stood silently, letting the weight of the past settle on him. Ranger sat perfectly at his heel, eyes forward, every muscle ready but calm. They looked out of place here, like relics of an era the Navy had intentionally buried. The soldiers didn't recognize him because they had never been taught about men like him. Their training manuals had replaced everything Echo Phantom once embodied. Aaron felt the familiar flicker of isolation creep into his chest. Even after all these years, the world still didn't know what he and Ranger had survived, or what they had lost. He wondered whether returning today had been a mistake, whether the invitation had been nothing more than a ghost reaching for him. Collins eventually stepped closer, voice unsure. Sir, look, I'm not saying I don't believe you. It's just, your files aren't there, like someone deleted you. They did, Aaron replied quietly. Why? Collins asked, genuinely curious. Aaron didn't answer. His eyes drifted to Ranger. Because some missions were never meant to exist. The sound of boots approached from outside, heavy, authoritative footsteps. Aaron lifted his head as the tent flap shifted. But the chapter ends here, at the moment before the truth re-enters his life. The tent's canvas walls trembled slightly as a breeze moved across the base, carrying faint echoes of marching cadence and distant engines warming up for the day's demonstrations. Inside, however, the air felt heavier, thicker, like the space itself understood the tension settling around Aaron Hale and Ranger. The young guards had stepped back but not away, still unsure, still trying to reconcile the unfamiliar weight of a man whose presence contradicted their training manuals. Ranger sat at Aaron's heel, silent and steady, a living reminder of something that didn't fit neatly into the system these soldiers trusted. Aaron kept his posture relaxed, though inside he could feel the drumbeat of old pressure rising, memories of being questioned, examined, doubted, all because he belonged to a world the military had chosen to bury. Yet he forced himself to breathe steadily. He had learned, long ago, that anger was a weapon too easily turned against its owner. Corporal Maddox Reyes paced near the table, irritation visible in the sharp lines of his face. His square jaw clenched and unclenched, and his dark eyes carried the defensive pride of a man who believed procedure protected him from mistakes. He stopped pacing only long enough to cast another glance at the outdated credentials lying before them. "Sir, the system still shows no matches," he repeated, as if hoping repetition would make the problem more obvious. Private First Class Jared Collins shifted awkwardly beside him, rubbing the back of his neck. He was younger, less rigid, more uncertain, and increasingly aware that uncertainty didn't mix well with the unpredictable presence of Aaron and Ranger. Maybe there's a glitch?" Collins offered softly, but Reyes shot him a look that killed the suggestion instantly. "There's no glitch," Reyes replied. "His badge numbers don't exist in current archives, and the dog's call sign, Ranger, comes back flagged as KIA 10 years ago, mission Stormfall." At the mention of Stormfall, a ripple of something dark passed behind Aaron's eyes. He didn't flinch outwardly, but Ranger felt the shift and leaned slightly closer to his leg. 10 years, Aaron thought. They still believed the dog died that day. Maybe that was the point. Reyes folded his arms. "Sir, this is starting to look like identity falsification. We can't just—" "Run the old code," Aaron interrupted quietly, his voice calm but razor-focused. "Check the pre-2009 handler database. It's not public and not linked to modern canine divisions. You'll need clearance level 3. Barstow, the tech, blinked. Level 3? None of us have that. Only senior staff. Then call someone who does, Aaron said. Reyes exhaled sharply, frustration painting every movement as he reached for his radio. "I'll request a supervisor, but it won't change the fact that you don't belong in the system." Aaron held his gaze. "Not anymore." Before Reyes could reply, the tent flap opened, and a man stepped inside with the weary posture of someone who had seen too much to be impressed by paperwork or protocol. Sergeant Tom Weaver was in his late 50s, tall but slightly stooped from years of parachute landings and long marches. His once strong build had softened with age, but his hands still looked capable of gripping a rifle with precision. His skin was weathered bronze, marked with deep lines around his eyes, lines carved by years of sun, sand, smoke, and loss. His thinning silver hair was cropped short, and a neatly trimmed gray beard traced the angles of his jaw. Despite the fatigue in his features, his hazel eyes remained sharp, the eyes of a man who had spent a lifetime memorizing danger. Weaver walked with a limp on his right leg, a reminder of an IED strike during an assignment in Helmand Province many years earlier. His injuries had ended his combat days, but not his instincts. They had simply reshaped him into the base's senior non-commissioned advisor, the kind of man who recognized truth faster than most officers. Reyes straightened immediately. "Sergeant Weaver, sir, we need verification on this man's documents. They're outdated. And his dog." But Weaver wasn't listening. The moment he stepped inside, his gaze fell on Ranger. He froze. Not a full stop of fear or confusion, but something far deeper, recognition so sudden it drained the color from his face. His breath hitched, and his hand unconsciously gripped the edge of the table. Ranger noticed him too. The dog's ears lifted slightly, his posture unchanged but attentive. He didn't stand. He didn't react in any way the younger guards would understand. But Weaver understood. He understood all too well. "No," Weaver whispered, barely audible. He stepped closer, eyes fixed on the worn patch attached to Ranger's harness, the faded emblem of a ghost unit the Navy had buried and sworn to forget. A trident crossed with a winged dagger, and beside it, a stylized phantom silhouette. Weaver blinked hard. It can't be. That mark. Echo Phantom? Reyes frowned. Echo Phantom? What is that, some old battalion? But Weaver didn't answer him. His gaze snapped up to Aaron, scanning the man's features like he was cataloging memories buried decades deep. "You," Weaver breathed. "You were Phantom's last handler. Hale. Aaron Hale." Collins took a step back. "You know him?" Weaver exhaled a shuddering breath, like meeting a ghost he'd mourned years ago. Everyone who served near the Black Ops corridors knew of Phantom. They weren't a team you forgot. They were the ones who pulled out the soldiers no one else could reach. Reyes squinted skeptically. "Sergeant, their names would be in the system if that were true." Weaver turned on him, eyes sharp as knives. "That's the point. They weren't in the system. They were ghosts. Their missions weren't logged. Their injuries weren't recorded. Their deaths," he paused, looking again at Ranger, disbelief cracking his voice, "were classified." Barstow swallowed hard. "Sir, according to our data, Ranger was listed as killed in action during Stormfall." Weaver shook his head. "Stormfall wasn't an operation. It was a massacre." He looked straight at Aaron. "We heard only fragments, that a whole recon unit was pinned down, that a handler and his K9 pulled 3 wounded men across a canyon under fire, but no bodies were ever recovered." "That's because we weren't dead," Aaron said quietly. The tent fell silent. Reyes looked between them, searching for logic. "Sergeant, with respect, this still doesn't explain why his credentials don't scan, or why the invitation has no signature." Weaver studied Aaron again, his posture, the scars along his temple, the cold steadiness in his eyes. Those weren't features of a liar. Those were the marks of a man the military had used up and abandoned in shadows. "What brings you here, Hale?" Weaver asked softly. Aaron hesitated only a moment. "I received a letter. No name, no sender. Just instructions to appear for the K9 trials today." Weaver's brows furrowed. "Someone wanted you back on this base." "Yes," Aaron answered. "But they didn't want anyone else to know." Reyes scoffed. "That's ridiculous. Why would command hide something like that?" "Because," Weaver murmured, "if he's back, it means someone at the top remembers Echo Phantom, and that's something this base isn't prepared to handle." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone, an old, sturdy model used by senior staff. His thumbs moved with urgency. After a moment, he brought the phone to his ear and stepped away from the guards. His voice dropped low. This is Sergeant Weaver. Patch me through to Commander Monroe. Reyes's eyes widened. Monroe? The base commander? Weaver ignored him. After a brief pause, Weaver spoke again, his voice tight. Commander, sir, we have a situation at Gate Tent 2, someone you need to see. His gaze returned to Ranger as if confirming the impossible. It's Hale and the dog, the canine from Phantom. A silence hung long enough for everyone in the tent to feel it. Yes, sir, Weaver said finally. I'm certain. He ended the call and exhaled long, steady, trembling. Collins, now pale, whispered, What happens now? Weaver didn't answer immediately. Instead, he approached Aaron slowly, studying him with the care of someone handling a memory that might shatter at any second. Hale, we thought you and Ranger were gone. For good. Aaron met his eyes. We were forgotten, not gone. Something in Weaver's expression softened. Respect, sorrow, and a faint flicker of hope. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of every hidden story he'd ever heard, Weaver said one quiet sentence. I called the commander because you're not just some man with expired paperwork. You're the man they tried to erase. And for the first time that morning, Aaron felt something shift. Not fear, not anger, but the cold certainty that whatever had brought him back to this base was far bigger than an invitation. It was the beginning of an unraveling, and someone, somewhere, wanted the truth to surface. The convoy of matte black military SUVs cut across the base road like a blade, engines low and synchronized, moving with an urgency that didn't rely on sirens. Soldiers nearby straightened instinctively as they passed, sensing that whatever was coming was not routine. Inside the screening tent, Aaron Hale stood motionless beside Ranger, though every muscle beneath his jacket was taut with anticipation. He had known, the moment Weaver made that call, that the past he'd spent years outrunning was about to walk straight toward him. Sergeant Tom Weaver stood at the tent entrance, hands clasped behind his back, the practiced posture of an old soldier bracing himself for a storm he both feared and respected. PFC Collins and Corporal Reyes hovered near the scanner table, their earlier certainty now replaced with jittering nerves. The weight of their mistake pulled visibly at their shoulders. Then the engines outside cut off. Silence followed, a deep, resonant void that filled the tent with pressure. The flap opened. Captain Elias Monroe stepped inside. He was in his early 50s, tall, easily 6'3", with a frame still built for combat, despite the tailored officer's uniform. His once black hair had deep streaks of iron gray at the temples, styled with military strictness. His face was angular, sharply defined, with a strong jaw and a faint scar running from the left brow down toward the cheek, an old wound from a mission no one was supposed to remember. His eyes, a piercing steel blue, were the kind that saw everything and forgot nothing. Years of command had etched lines into his skin, but none dulled the authority he radiated. He was the kind of man who did not need to raise his voice to command an entire room. Behind him entered two more figures. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Whitfield, a slim, tall woman in her late 30s, with ash-blonde hair and a tight, immaculate bun. Her skin was fair, her cheekbones high, and her eyes sharp with analytical intelligence. She carried herself with poise shaped by both academy discipline and operational fieldwork. And Master Chief Roland Pike, early 60s, broad-shouldered, with a chest like a reinforced bulkhead. His dark skin carried decades of sun and grit, and his thick white beard framed a mouth set in a perpetual scowl. Pike had the aura of a man who had survived too many battles to waste words. But the moment Captain Monroe stepped fully into the tent, his stern composure faltered. His gaze locked on Aaron, then fell to Ranger. The breath caught visibly in his chest. "No," Monroe whispered. "That's not possible." Aaron didn't move. Ranger didn't blink. Monroe took a single step forward, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and something deeper, grief, relief, and the shock of seeing a ghost wearing skin instead of memory. "Aaron Hale," Monroe said, voice shaking once before regaining steadiness. "Phantom, you're alive." Aaron inclined his head. "Captain," Monroe swallowed hard, his jaw flexed. "And Ranger," his voice cracked again. "God, you two were declared dead. They told us Stormfall consumed the whole team." At the name Stormfall, Ranger shifted, ears pricking slightly. The subtle movement pulled Monroe's attention instantly. "My boy," he murmured, kneeling slowly, as if approaching a sacred relic. "You were the finest canine I ever saw." His hand hovered in the air, then fell back to his side, grief stopping him from touching the dog without permission. "We buried empty boxes for both of you. They made speeches. They closed your file." "They tried to," Aaron corrected quietly. Monroe's head lifted. Behind him, Pike muttered something under his breath, something like a prayer or a curse. Reyes finally found his voice, though it trembled. "Sir, we didn't know. His documents didn't scan. Protocol required—" "Silence," Monroe said. Not shouted, not barked, but delivered with a finality that cut through the air like a blade. Reyes snapped his mouth shut so quickly his teeth clicked. Monroe turned fully toward Aaron and Ranger, and the room collectively inhaled as the captain straightened, shoulders squared, posture shifting into something reverent. The past had returned, and the weight of it altered every inch of the tent. Then Monroe spoke a word the newer soldiers had never heard, but one that hit every senior enlisted member like a bolt from history. "Phantom." Ranger stood, not quickly, not dramatically, but with the cold, controlled precision of a creature forged for war. His body angled slightly, his stance narrowing, tail lowered in a combat-ready alignment. Then he performed a maneuver, a silent turn, a calculated shift of weight, a three-step positional adjustment, one so ancient it no longer appeared in modern canine manuals. Pike gasped. Collins's mouth fell open. Whitfield's eyes widened. "Holy," Pike whispered. "That's old-class echo training. That move hasn't been executed in over a decade." "That's because," Monroe said softly, "only one dog was ever trained to do it." He looked at Ranger with a reverence that bordered on awe. "And he died, or so we were told." Aaron placed a hand briefly on Ranger's back, a grounding gesture. "We survived. They just didn't come looking for us." Monroe inhaled sharply. "Aaron, why didn't you contact us? Why didn't you come home?" Aaron met his eyes with the weary honesty of a man who had carried silence like armor. "Because the world didn't want us back." The tent was so quiet even Ranger's breathing sounded loud. Monroe straightened, fury simmering under his controlled exterior. "Weaver," he said, turning toward the older sergeant, "you were right to call." Weaver nodded respectfully. "Sir, I only did what any soldier should." Monroe's gaze hardened as he turned toward Reyes and Collins. The two guards stiffened like statues awaiting execution. "Corporal Reyes, Private Collins." Both men snapped to attention. "You accused a decorated handler of falsifying identity." Monroe's voice was cold. "You dismissed a canine who has more confirmed operational hours than anyone on this base. You undermined protocol by relying on incomplete systems instead of observation, instinct, or respect." Collins swallowed. Reyes's face drained of color. "Sir, Reyes began. "You erased him," Monroe cut in sharply, "just like the system once tried to. And that is unacceptable." Whitfield stepped forward, posture crisp. "Captain, shall I file disciplinary actions?" "Immediately," Monroe replied. "Failure to recognize veteran protocol, failure to escalate appropriately, and failure to maintain situational awareness in the presence of a highly trained canine." Reyes looked crushed. Collins looked on the verge of tears. Aaron stepped forward slightly. "Captain, they were following the rules, and they weren't wrong to question what didn't match their system." Monroe turned to him, eyes softening. "Aaron, it's not about rules. It's about respect." Aaron shook his head once. "Let them learn from it. That's enough." The captain studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. The reprimand will stand, but they won't lose their positions." Both young soldiers exhaled shakily, relief flooding their faces. Then Monroe motioned to Whitfield and Pike. "Clear the tent." The two officers stepped outside to instruct bystanders to move back, granting privacy. Moments later, Monroe faced Aaron again, this time not as a commander, but as a man confronting a ghost. "Phantom," he said quietly. "Why now? Why come back after all these years?" "I didn't come back," Aaron replied. "I was summoned." Monroe's brow tightened. "Summoned? By whom?" "I don't know," Aaron answered. "Only that someone wanted us here for the K9 trials."
Someone who knew we were alive.
Ranger let out a low huff, neither a growl nor a whine, but a sound Aaron had come to recognize as agreement. Monroe considered this, his face darkening. There are few people in this world who know how to find a ghost unit, and fewer who would dare summon one. He took a deep breath, then placed a firm hand on Aaron's shoulder, his voice low with conviction. "But I won't let them bury you again. Not ever." He turned toward the tent entrance and spoke with a voice that carried across the base. "This is Handler Aaron Hale, and this is Ranger Echo Phantom K9, designation Alpha 9. They are alive, authorized, and under my direct protection." People outside the tent began to murmur. Soldiers stopped walking. Some removed their covers in silent respect. Monroe faced Aaron once more. "Welcome home, Phantom." And for the first time in 10 years, Aaron allowed himself to believe that the world had not entirely forgotten him. The training field shimmered under the late morning sun, heat rising from the packed dirt and artificial obstacles built to simulate urban combat zones. Rows of bleachers lined the southern edge, filled with families, active-duty personnel, and curious visitors who had come expecting a polished demonstration, not the sudden revelation of a handler and K9 long believed dead. The air hummed with a mixture of anticipation and unease, as if everyone instinctively felt the day had shifted into unfamiliar territory. Captain Elias Monroe walked beside Aaron Hale toward the center staging area, his boots striking the asphalt with a controlled rhythm. His normally composed demeanor carried a new edge, part pride, part dread, and part something far more personal. The reappearance of Aaron and Ranger had dismantled a decade of assumptions, and Monroe seemed unable to look at Aaron without glimpsing the ghosts of Stormfall. Aaron walked with steady purpose, though inwardly his thoughts churned. Ranger moved close at his heel, body taut, not stressed, but primed. The dog's sharp amber eyes scanned the environment in constant motion, cataloging shapes, movements, shadows. Every breeze carried scents, and Ranger processed them with the cold efficiency of a predator, trained not just to survive, but to protect. Even after 10 years outside the system, he was still a weapon whose instincts never dulled. Monroe halted near a small group of officers assembled at the edge of the testing ground. Aaron recognized none of them personally, but their uniforms and demeanor gave away their roles. Program overseers, evaluators, and commanders assigned to the K9 Modernization Initiative. One man stepped forward, Major Brent Holloway, the current director of the K9 Tactical Development Unit. Holloway was in his early 40s, tall and rigidly upright, with close-cropped sandy hair and a jawline so sharp it looked sculpted rather than grown. His skin was sun-bronzed, and his eyes, a flat shade of cold green, held a calculating quality that did not soften even when he smiled. He looked like the kind of officer who measured people by usefulness, not morality. Beside him stood Dr. Leanne Mercer, a civilian behavior specialist contracted to refine the neuro-response training of the newest K9 units. She was a petite woman in her mid-30s, with straight black hair tied into a low ponytail and sharp, observant features softened by warm, amber-brown eyes. Her skin was smooth and light, with a calm, academic aura about her. She kept her arms folded loosely, posture relaxed but attentive, the stance of someone who saw far more than she voiced. Holloway offered a curt nod. "Captain Monroe, we heard you were bringing a legacy handler." The pause before legacy did not go unnoticed. Monroe's voice was cool. "Major Holloway, this is Aaron Hale, Ranger's handler." Holloway gave a professional smile that failed to reach his eyes. "The man of the hour, and the dog reportedly older than our database wants to admit. Well, welcome back to the program, however temporarily." Aaron didn't respond. Ranger didn't blink. Dr. Mercer studied Ranger with an expression that balanced awe and scientific hunger. Incredible. His gait is symmetric, stride-to-stride variation minimal. That level of stability usually degrades by age 6, but he's exhibiting peak condition mechanics. "Ranger doesn't degrade," Aaron said simply. Holloway chuckled under his breath. "We'll see about that." Before Monroe could snap at him, Holloway gestured toward the obstacle field where soldiers were clearing the area. Captain, I'm assuming you brought Phantom here for more than nostalgia. Are you asking us to reinstate him? No, Monroe said sharply. I'm establishing his legitimacy. Some on this base need reminding of what real capability looks like. Holloway's brows lifted. Very well, then let's test him. Aaron felt Ranger shift, ready. What's the trial? Aaron asked. Holloway smirked. Simple. Your dog must perform at least 3 advanced maneuvers we use in modern operations: agility breach, hostile scent acquisition, and signal interference. He'll be judged on precision, speed, and handler coordination. Frankly, it's unlikely he still meets the bar, but if he shows even partial competency, it'll satisfy the spectators. Monroe turned sharply. This test was designed for current generation canines, not a phantom unit dog. And yet, Holloway replied, you brought him here. Aaron stepped forward. Ranger can handle it. Just tell me where to start. Holloway motioned toward a raised platform. Begin at the breach wall. Aaron and Ranger approached the structure, a 3-tiered angled barrier meant to simulate boarded entry points. As Aaron gave the start signal, Ranger surged forward with the explosive precision of a missile, scaling the barrier faster than some younger dogs could dream. His paws struck with perfect spatial calculation. His weight shifted with center of mass awareness that seemed almost engineered. Murmurs rose from the crowd. Holloway's expression tightened. Next came scent acquisition. A mock urban alley had been prepared with 5 decoy scent markers. Ranger located the hostile scent in 8 seconds, half the time of current program averages, and sat sharply to signal. Dr. Mercer gasped softly. That's extraordinary. But the final test was the one that mattered most: signal interference. Modern operations involved canines identifying radio frequencies or mechanical signals used by drones or remote devices. Ranger had learned a predecessor method years before, one based on acoustic pattern recognition rather than electromagnetic mapping. The instructor set the device on the field. Aaron murmured the old code phrase, one that hadn't been spoken outside Black Ops circles in a decade. Ranger's ears twitched. Then he moved. He circled the device in a tight arc, performing short, abrupt directional shifts, aligning acoustically to triangulate a low-frequency pulse. He stopped exactly where the signal source was strongest. Perfect. The evaluators were stunned. Monroe folded his arms with quiet pride. But before Holloway could comment, the sound hit. A whine. High-pitched, rising. Heads snapped upward. A drone, sleek, black, and fast, dove out of the sky, banking hard toward the test field. Screams erupted from the bleachers. Monroe barked, "What the hell? That's not ours." The drone swerved erratically, as if fighting its own programming. Then its underside flashed, red, blinking fast. Collins shouted from the sidelines, "Sir, it's armed!" Chaos detonated across the field. Families pushed toward the exits. Soldiers ran to grab shields. Officers yelled for evacuation. Holloway froze, pale as ash. "Shut the signal! Disable it!" Barstow, stationed near the tech booth, yelled back, "We can't! It's been hijacked! Someone's overriding command protocols!" Monroe turned to Aaron with urgency carved deep into his features. "If that thing hits the stands—" He didn't finish. Aaron didn't need him to. The old instinct, the one he thought had died in Stormfall, ignited in his chest with terrifying clarity. "Ranger!" The dog snapped instantly to him. Aaron switched frequencies on his wrist communicator, tapping into a channel no longer listed in military use. The code phrase existed only in the Phantom program. His voice dropped low, almost reverent. "Alpha 9, break the line." Ranger launched. He sprinted across the field with lethal velocity, weaving through scattering soldiers like a bullet tracing its destined path. Dust exploded beneath his paws. His eyes locked onto the drone's oscillation pattern, reading its flawed flight path with battlefield intelligence. The drone dipped lower, buzzing inches above the ground, blinking faster, arming sequence nearing completion. Ranger jumped. Aaron held his breath. Ranger's jaws didn't bite. They clamped onto the antenna mount, severing the drone's command receptor. The device faltered, spiraled, and crashed into the sandpit, its explosive core disabled by the abrupt signal break.
Silence swallowed the field.
It lasted 1 second, then 2, then 3, and then the base erupted. Cheers thundered from every direction. Soldiers pounded their fists on railings. Families cried and laughed. Officers shook their heads in disbelief. Monroe exhaled slowly, staring at Aaron like someone witnessing a myth come alive. "You saved 50 lives in under 10 seconds. Aaron scratched Ranger behind the neck as the dog trotted back to him, panting lightly but triumphant. "He saved them. I just gave the order." Holloway approached, face pale, ego shattered beneath the overwhelming evidence of Ranger's capability. "That code," he stammered, "that maneuver, none of our dogs are trained for that. That's obsolete protocol." "Not obsolete," Aaron said, "just forgotten." Dr. Mercer stepped forward, tears in her eyes, not of sorrow, but awe. "Ranger's not just a survivor.
He's the blueprint.
Monroe lifted his head toward the crowd and spoke with the force of truth breaking chains. "This is why Echo Phantom was the most feared and respected unit in canine warfare. This is what the world lost when they buried their records. And this," he gestured toward Aaron and Ranger, "is what resilience looks like." The applause returned, even louder. Ranger pressed against Aaron's leg, proud but calm. And Aaron, after so long believing he and Ranger had no place left in this world, felt something warm bloom beneath the scars. They were home. The late afternoon sun dipped low across the naval base, staining the sky with hues of warm gold and soft indigo. The field where moments earlier chaos had threatened lives was now transformed into a place of celebration, though the atmosphere still carried the lingering electricity of adrenaline and awe. Soldiers stood in clusters, murmuring about the miracle they had witnessed. Families pointed toward Ranger with wide eyes, whispering stories that would become legends by nightfall. The wind stirred lightly, carrying the smell of sea salt and newly disturbed earth. It felt like the world itself had paused to honor something sacred. Captain Elias Monroe walked in front of Aaron Hale, his broad back straight, pacing with a steady confidence that radiated both relief and renewed purpose. He motioned for Aaron to follow him toward the center stage that had been hastily prepared, a raised platform now draped with the American flag, K-9 division emblems, and a podium adorned with military insignia. Monroe's sharp blue eyes softened each time they flicked toward Ranger, who paced calmly beside Aaron, unfazed by the attention, as if saving an entire base from an explosive drone were simply part of his daily routine. The crowd gradually gathered in a semicircle around the platform. Officers lined up on the left, enlisted members stood at attention on the right. The bleachers overflowed with civilians, their applause beginning even before Monroe touched the microphone. Aaron felt the weight of the moment press against his ribs. He wasn't accustomed to this. Public acknowledgement, praise, spotlight. Phantom operators had always been shadows, ghosts. They were trained to succeed without witness and survive without recognition. For the first time in years, he felt the unfamiliar warmth of gratitude settle onto his shoulders instead of suspicion or hidden agendas. As Monroe stepped forward, Aaron's eyes drifted toward the rows of younger soldiers, men and women barely in their 20s, eager faces turned toward him with admiration. He wondered how many of them understood what it meant to sacrifice, to be erased, to lose everything except the partner who refused to leave his side. Then Monroe's voice boomed across the field, resonant and steady. "Today," he began, "we witnessed something extraordinary, not because danger appeared. Danger is something every one of us trains to face, but because of how it was answered." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "A hijacked drone, armed and headed straight for our personnel, should have been a tragedy," Monroe continued. "Instead, it became a reminder of legacy, of courage, and of the warriors this nation once lost, but today found again." He turned, looked directly at Aaron, then at Ranger. "Sergeant Aaron Hale," he said, using a rank the military had stripped from Aaron years ago, "and K-9 operative Ranger of Echo Phantom have demonstrated that true skill, true discipline, and true devotion do not fade with time, bureaucracy, or abandonment. Today, they saved lives, not because anyone asked them to, but because that is who they are." Applause thundered through the air. Aaron exhaled slowly, his heartbeat steady but heavy. Ranger leaned gently against his leg, not seeking affection, but offering solidarity. Monroe lifted a box from the podium and held it up.
This medal, he announced, was commissioned 10 years ago. It was meant to be awarded for extraordinary gallantry in the Stormfall mission, a mission we were told claimed both your lives. The citation was written, stamped, and sealed, but you were never there to receive it. He paused, swallowing the rough edge of emotion. Until now. He opened the box to reveal the Navy Cross, one of the military's highest honors. Its blue ribbon gleamed brilliantly in the late sun. Aaron's breath caught. He had never expected any acknowledgement. Stormfall was supposed to be buried, along with the soldiers who fell and the ones who survived but were erased for political convenience. Monroe approached him and pinned the medal onto his jacket. It felt heavier than metal. It felt like closure. "Sergeant Hale," Monroe said softly,
only loud enough for Aaron to hear. "You carried the silence alone for too long." Then Monroe stepped aside and gestured to Ranger. "And now," he said, voice amplifying again, "we honor the longest surviving Phantom K-9 operative." A handler from the current K-9 program approached with a specially crafted collar, thick black leather reinforced with steel, embossed with the ancient Phantom insignia. The handler was a woman in her late 20s, Corporal Dana Rowe, with dark auburn hair braided tightly against her scalp, freckles scattered across fair skin, and warm hazel eyes. She moved with the confidence of someone dedicated to the K-9 craft, her posture upright and sure. She looked at Ranger with reverence, not pity nor disbelief. "Permission to collar the operative?" she asked. Aaron nodded once. She knelt, securing the collar gently around Ranger's neck. Ranger remained perfectly still, eyes focused forward. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Monroe lifted a hand, waiting for the applause to fade. "There's one more matter to address," he said, turning his gaze fully to Aaron. "The world may see you as a hero today, but heroes do not stand still. They shape what comes next." Aaron watched him carefully. Monroe's tone had changed, becoming quieter, more personal. Something unspoken shifted in the air. "Phantom," Monroe said. "It's time." Aaron's muscles tightened subtly. "Time for what?" Monroe stepped closer, lowering his voice enough that only Aaron, Ranger, and those nearest could hear. "For you to come home." Aaron's brow furrowed. "I'm no longer a soldier, not in the official sense." "You don't need to be," Monroe replied. "I'm not asking you to fight another war." His eyes softened with an emotion Aaron hadn't seen in them since before Stormfall. Hope. "I want you to train the next generation of handlers," Monroe said, "to give them what only you and Ranger can. Discipline, instinct, humility, real battlefield experience, things our manuals can't teach." Aaron stared at him, stunned. Monroe continued. "Ranger will serve too, not on the front lines, but as the ultimate training model. His instincts, his precision, his discipline, their living doctrine. Together, you can reshape everything." For a moment, Aaron couldn't speak. Memories of Stormfall, of loss, of silence, they crashed through him like a wave. But beneath them, something else emerged, something warm, something deeply human. Purpose. Ranger pressed against him again, lifting his head gently into Aaron's palm. A question, a reassurance. Aaron swallowed. "If Ranger agrees, I accept." Monroe smiled for the first time that day. He already agreed when he saved us all. The crowd erupted again, not just in applause but in cheers, raw, emotional, grateful. As the ceremony concluded, people lined the walkway to the base entrance. Soldiers saluted. Civilians pressed hands to their hearts. Even Holloway and Dr. Mercer stood in quiet respect. Collins and Reyes stood at attention, saluting with a mix of guilt and reverence. Aaron and Ranger walked side by side toward the gate, this time not stopped, not questioned, not doubted. Every eye followed them. Every expression reflected gratitude, awe, or admiration. For the first time since Stormfall, Aaron didn't feel like a ghost. He felt like a man returning, not to war, but to life. Ranger walked with his head high, tail still, posture perfect. They stepped beyond the gate together, not into exile, but into honor.
and for the first time in a decade, the world made room for them again. Sometimes the greatest miracles are not explosions of light or signs written across the sky. Sometimes, a miracle is simply someone returning when the world believed they were gone. A quiet loyalty that refuses to die. A courage that rises again when fear says it shouldn't. A bond between a man and his dog that survives, even when history tries to erase it. Aaron and Ranger remind us of something precious, that no matter how broken the past feels, no matter how many times life tells you your story is over, there is always a moment waiting. A moment when everything turns, and the world finally sees your worth. Maybe you, too, are carrying battles no one else sees. Maybe you've been overlooked, underestimated, or forgotten. But miracles still happen. In loyalty, in resilience, in unexpected second chances, and in the quiet strength God places in your heart when you need it most. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment about the battles you've overcome. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so more people can feel this message too. And may God bless you, protect your family, guide your steps, and shine His grace upon every challenge you face. Because sometimes the miracle you're waiting for is already on its way.